I'm honored to open the closing plenary, and I would like to invite the 10th President of the State of Israel, Mr. Rivlin, to the stage for an interview with Liat Regev, a journalist and an anchor in Cannes and the second channel on radio. Hello to the 10th President of the State of Israel, the former President Reuven. Good evening. Hello. Thank you, Liat. In America, once president, always president, but not in Israel, thank God. Even though it's once prime minister, always prime minister, but not a president. Would you like to add on the topic? No. I see no need. We'll see later on. Mr. Rivlin, how are you nowadays? Well, thank you very much. I personally feel well. The situation of everyone here is extremely worrisome, and this is why this actually overshadows my personal feeling. Is it worrisome, or are you really anxious about the future of the State of Israel? During my term of office as the President of the State, I met many times one of the politicians and leaders, the most serious ones in the world, was Chancellor Merkel. And she used to say, listen, President of the State of Israel, we are the second generation of the Holocaust, and we do feel this unequivocal commitment to the State of Israel. And this is why our relations will not change, even when we can be angry or see things from a different perspective to what we saw until now. But you have to know that the third and fourth generation of the Holocaust in Germany admires the State of Israel because of its principles, because of its capabilities, because of its priorities, despite all the difficulties and the political situation, the security situation, the military situation that the State of Israel is in. You are a startup nation, extremely successful. You are a role model to the entire world, and you are a society that, despite all the difficult problems that you are facing, you maintain stability and an ability to manage a state, even though many times you have very profound controversies that no other people would tolerate. Because of your principles, because of the way you stick to these principles, because of this divided people, but the one insisting on maintaining those principles, they admire you. Woe on you if you change. If you change, the third and fourth generations will no longer think about the historic past that our peoples share. So I have one prayer and one request. Talk to the Israeli leaders, many of whom are your students or people who were extremely close to you in your different positions in Israeli democracy. Please stay as you are. Do not change. Do not turn into something that would no longer be appreciated as a society that holds such principles that even in states of controversy, you still maintain. I listened to Madam Merkel, and I passed the message to quite a number of leaders, among them those who became prime ministers, including the current prime minister, Netanyahu, all the prime ministers, including the current one. Can we not include the current prime minister in prime ministers? Moreover, he was a prime minister before as well. I think that it has been said to each and every one of the Israeli citizens. We have been living without a constitution for 75 years, and still we created a common law that is more than the British common law. We created a situation in which, despite the fact that we have no constitution, we can live in a democracy that is a liberal democracy, which means that we, under no circumstances, can undermine the rights of the individual, even if we are a majority that can do almost anything we want within the decisions of the Knesset. Who guards this liberalism when there's in the absence of a constitution? It is guarded by a system which I know, and I have known from the day this state has been established, because I don't tell anyone, was born 10 years before the establishment of the State of Israel, and the Supreme Court, headed by Olshan and also by Agranat and by Landau and Shamgar, Justice Shamgar, and ultimately under Aharon Barak, who truly thought that there was going to be a social revolution when the social coup was introduced. And he said that we today, after the law of human dignity and liberty, can decide whichever way, because we are the commentators of the Constitution. And you are the first ones who talked about this. I just want to say, to the credit of Professor Barak, that he was an outstanding theoretician, one of the greatest jurists, but he hardly ever revoked a law of the Knesset. I'd like to ask you, with your permission, Reuven, Rivlin, who used to be a president once. Yeah, there are those who say former president of the State of Israel has said, hey, friends, the state is not the former state. The president is the former president. Ruvi Rivlin, at the Herzliya conference 7 years ago, you gave the speech of the tribes, and you opened this entire move that perhaps we get to its peak now, and you use a very dramatic word. If we seek life as a state, we must turn our gaze toward this reality and do everything within our power to reunite. Seek life means that we are on the verge of an existential threat.
Look, any kind of threat or anxiety can exacerbate the anxiety, and any exacerbation in an anxiety can undermine the social situation, and every social situation or state that is undermined can lead to for some very difficult situations. Reichman was my teacher, so I'm simply, I simply used his expressions, because you were president until 2 years ago. You were a president of all citizens of the State of Israel, and today a lot of people are talking about the division, the partition between the State of Israel and the State of Judea. How does somebody who was everyone's president view this? Do you fear that we might reach such a situation, that we might get there? Look, the speech of the tribes wasn't a speech in which I wanted and declared. It was, the purpose was to warn. In my speech, I said, we today see the statistical yearbook in Israel, and according to the projections in 2019, the majority of Israeli students, first-grade students, will not be Zionist. And when the State of Israel was established, there were two minorities, 5% Arabs, and there were about 4 or 5% ultra-Orthodox Jews, and all the rest went to the regular secular state schools. We indeed wanted to give these special communities, these special tribes, life within us, a status that could express their yearnings and their desire to educate their children, the Haredi Jews, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, in line with their tradition and their faith, and our cousins, the Arabs, who are Israeli citizens, proper Israeli citizens, who were exempted from the need to serve in the military because of national reasons and not for religious reasons, and they were the people who asked to study in Arabic to keep their language and the Arabic language in line with the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence, was written partially at my father's home, Professor Rivlin. He was a professor of Arabic, and they sought his advice on how to translate it into Arabic, because sometimes in a translation you can completely disrupt the entire concept behind the words or sentences. But when you gave that tribe's speech 8 years ago, you were in a different position, and you said that these agreements from 1948 don't really exist today because we've changed. And with your permission, former President Ruvi Rivlin, because we don't have a lot of time, with your permission, I'd like to focus on the situation today. For example, you say in your tribe speech, can we bear a situation in which two sectors within the population population do not serve in the military, do not watch the ceremony of the lighting of the torches? Are we willing for them not to serve in the military, but instead of that to do a civil service? But when you look at the basic law, studying the Torah, studying the Bible, anybody studying the Torah significantly over time will be considered as if providing important service for the state, and that his rights and duties will be derived from that. Is this law a uniting one or one that separates between the tribes? Anybody who passed this law never dreamt that it would be interpreted in this way. These are the words of the law, and today it's written in the law, but in the Herzliya conference back then, all I wanted to was to warn from the option, from the possibility that we will have tribes in Israel, not that in Israel there will be tribes as we had in its establishment. The state school, the state secular school, 80% of all Israeli pupils studied there. We didn't have the religious state schools. We had the independent stream of the ultra-Orthodox Jews, and we had the Arab school system, but 80% of all other Israelis went to one school, one stream of schools. We allowed the tribes to live within us. We let them feel free being part of the state of Israel. So I warned that perhaps the moment would come, and regretfully, it seems like back then it was a warning and even a writing on the wall that is more than illuminating. It already is starting to create noises that are warning all of us. And according to it, the tribes are saying to the state of Israel, you are our country. It's not that we are your tribes. And these things are even more severe. Look, I remember the days when I was a pupil in the Hebrew gymnasia at the age of 12 years old, in the 7th and 8th grades. It was even after my bar mitzvah. And when we were certain that we have a country in which there is absolute unity with freedom of expression to each and every tribe. How far are we from there today, from this absolute unity? We agreed at the time. There was an agreement between the independent tribe, the ultra-Orthodox tribe, and they've always said to us, we agree to the existence of the state of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, but why don't you explain to us what a Jewish state is? There were arguments on that even back then, but we agreed with them that a small minority of those, some of those who are outstanding students will go to a special school and will be exempt from military service and can focus on studying the Torah so that they can hold on to the tenets of Judaism. Have we gone too far with this today? Yes, today we say to this tribe, you are free to do whatever you want to. You will decide for the state what to do, and we are not going to hear what the state asks of us. So you're saying that this tribe, the ultra-Orthodox tribe, is telling the state of Israel what to do, and it's not that the state of Israel is telling them what to do. Today, all the tribes are actually saying, you cannot exist without me. You cannot maintain a system that will set laws or a system that will have the executive branch, the government, and you won't be able to carry out whatever you want in the way you interpret democracy without us being a part of it. So you belong to us, we don't belong to you. Ruvi, Rivlin, do you believe that there could be some kind of an operative outcome from the conversations at the president's residence? You were there, you were involved in similar compromises, and you know all the elements involved. Do you think that a certain compromise can come out of it that will benefit the state of Israel and the entire people of Israel? Look, different people have different styles, and I've no doubt that if the president thinks that he could yield a worthy and adequate result, not only is it his right to do so, it is even his duty, because this is one of the roles that he needs to carry out by law. But I have to say, if you're asking me, I wouldn't, me personally, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm mistaken, that's definitely possible. I personally wouldn't do something that I couldn't reach a compromise without the parties realizing from the outset that it is impossible to be done in such a way that it was suggested. For example, there's something called democracy, and we knew what it was very well for 60 years. Definitely, we understood, and the people understood just how strong they were. And despite the disagreements, we could reach decisions. There were some very fierce struggles that could have, God forbid, led to a civil war. But today, we find ourselves in a situation in which, if, for example, we are talking about democracy, I don't think that there's any university. Professor Reichman is the president of this university, the university where we're sitting at. Can we compromise, for example, on something such as something completely theoretical as democracy, which is the essence of our lives, to say, you know what, we can do without it. Why don't we have half a democracy? You know, I'm from Jerusalem, so I'm very naive. I don't know how you can compromise on such a thing. So what does it actually mean? You're either a Jerusalemite or you're not. You can't be half a Jerusalemite. Yes, I agree with you that we cannot compromise. No, no, no. Forget about Ruvi Rivlin. Now talking about Jerusalem and democracy. So let me ask you about democracy. If you're saying that a compromise cannot be reached, I'm not saying that a compromise cannot be reached. I'm saying that I cannot. What does that mean for the State of Israel? What does that mean for the future of the State of Israel, for the future of the State of Israel to be maintained? Because we need to reach some decision. Do we need to regress, to withdraw from the judiciary reform, or should we continue with it? Look, a judiciary reform is a reform, but this isn't a reform. What is it? It's an absolute change of the principles of the law, of the judiciary. But these things are quite obvious. No need to applaud. But it's because Ruvi Rivlin said it. No, Professor Shachevitz said that before me, and Professor Levontin said that. Levontin would always say there is no relative and negative. So what are you saying, that this reform is not a reform, that it's a change, a significant change, for the simple reason that until now we had a Supreme Court, and we definitely had, each one individually or for many people on a public level, we maybe had complaints or disagreements or arguments with them, but the only place where there was someone who could maintain the liberalism and democracy without liberalism is not a democracy, because the rule of the majority is not the tyranny of the majority, and the only situation in which there is no constitution, there's one factor that could protect the rights of individuals as individuals who are citizens in a country. The only entity who can do that is the Supreme Court, as an independent entity. And there definitely should be a reform in the Supreme Court. You know, in the court's law, it says that a criminal law should happen from one day to the next in order to end the saga. People want to know. People want to know if they can elect a mayor. Yes, but the Minister of Justice, it's not what he's trying to promote nowadays. You know that better than I do. I'm not involved in politics at the moment, so I don't know what's being done on these matters. Moreover, I can even tell you, even if I'm bluffing here, and I do know, I think that the president shouldn't intervene in these matters. A former president, not a current president. And let me ask you in a more specific way, if this reform continues, because right now they've frozen the discussions at the president's residence. If there is no compromise, what does it mean about the State of Israel? What will the State of Israel look like if this reform passes? Well, it's such a difficult question, and I just went, to high school and the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I never studied with Professor Reichman, so it's difficult for me to answer this question, but I have no doubt that any citizen in the State of Israel can explain to himself or herself if the reform will pass. It's no longer the State of Israel that we founded in 1948. Let me tell you, in 1948, we understood that there won't be a constitution. When Ben-Gurion said to the chair of the Constitution Committee, there is no such thing anywhere in the world as a Constitution Committee. There is a Law and Justice Committee. We are a Constitution, Law and Justice Committee, and the chair of the committee was said after the establishment of the Knesset in 1949. Here I am establishing a committee. It's the Constitution Committee, and in a matter of 6 months you will present a constitution. No prime minister needs a constitution. A constitution makes it very difficult for the executive. It makes it very difficult for the ministers and the government, because in order to change the constitution, you need 2/3 of the Knesset members, and that's tough. That's difficult. And I know certain prime ministers that overnight, for example, we passed a law, all of us together, with a national consensus not to have more than 18 ministers. And with 18 ministers, by the way, if I were in a government with 18 ministers, I think some of the ministers would have been jobless, not to mention what's happening today. Oh, I'm not talking about that. I don't know what's happening right now. Like I told you, I don't know what's going on today. But we need to understand that prime ministers did not want a constitution because the constitution makes it more difficult for them to change laws, even basic laws. I remember a prime minister who was elected in 1999, I think, as prime minister. And he changed a law of the 18 ministers in a matter of 6 hours. It's pretty clear. So I'd like to ask you about the current prime minister. That's Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he is leading the State of Israel. In tapes that were exposed a week ago at Kan 11 News, you said to Benny Gantz that you don't believe that Netanyahu will give him the rotation when the day comes. And today he keeps using the word together. He keeps saying, I want the best interest of the entire people of Israel. Do you believe that he says that he wants what's best for all Israelis? Do you think that this is what motivates him? Look, ladies and gentlemen, I believe every person who speaks to me and says, after in turmoil and from the depth of intention, with the depth of intention, when that person says, okay, I will uphold the rotation. If a person says something, I believe that they mean it, but I'm not sure that he even thinks that it's even possible, because who will lead the people if he won't? That's a problem. So I am telling you that it was my impression at the time, for the simple reason that the then prime minister, or the person who was going to be prime minister, I had deliberated as a president. Do I have the option, the possibility to give him, to assign the role to him, because there was the Pinchasi precedent in which he didn't allow a minister to serve as minister. So I said, how can I assign someone to be prime minister because that person, God forbid, there might be a letter of indictment against him. And I said, okay, I'm willing to discuss these topics until the Supreme Court sent it back to me. I spoke with all the former attorney generals, and I consulted with all the great professors. One of them is sitting here on the first row, in order to see, is there some kind of a problem here, not just a problem with values, but also a legal problem. They said this isn't a legal problem because we enacted the direct election to prime minister's law. And then the question was, what happens if the people elect a person who shouldn't serve as prime minister ethically? And he said, so it's not the court up to the court to decide, but the people will decide once they know the full picture. And we canceled the direct election law. And Yossi Beilin and myself, who were responsible for taking this out from the codex, we forgot that we amended the prime minister's law. And we didn't change that section there. So I'd like to ask you, we're approaching the end. We'll take an extra 2 or 3 minutes with your permission. In your tribe speech, you spoke about the Arab sector as well, not just the ultra-Orthodox sector. And you say, if we seek to live, we need to make sure that we all have a common denominator, that we have some kind of sense of mutual responsibility for each other. Do you see a real and sincere attempt to connect the Arab sector in Israel to some kind of Israeliness? Look, anywhere I visit in the world, there are a few words in English I know. I don't speak English well. I pretend to speak good English. And I say to them, we're not doomed to live together, but I don't know how to say we are descent. Our destiny is to live together. So those who speak better English will excuse me, because I do believe in it. Look, we never had a war with Islam. My late father, Professor Yosef Yoz, who was from Jerusalem and who studied in Frankfurt and was sent by the Jewish Yeshuv, by the Jewish community in Israel, and by Ben Yehuda to study Arabic in Frankfurt, because he could speak daily Arabic, mundane Arabic, and he translated the Quran, and he translated 1001 stories, and I think he even added some of his own fantasies, because he was truly... These people were his friends. And I'd like to tell you, the Israeli Arabs and us, we must build trust. Because in order to live together in the very complicated situation of the Palestinians and us, between the Jordan and the sea, where there will never be two sovereignties in the sense that the Palestinians want, do you see the makeup of the current government and the parties that join this government? A true desire, a true capability to connect the Israeli Arabs into one tribe the way you want them to. Look, minorities on both sides are inciting and lead to a radicalization. My assessment is, look, first of all, I served in the military along with my Druze brothers. My brethren, the Druze, my brothers, the Druze, they wanted to volunteer more than the Jews. Today, the conscription rate of the Druze community is almost 90%, whilst among the Jews it's a bit less, much more less than that. So this is why I'm saying we can. So the Druze are special, and they are a separate tribe within this entire regional system. But I'm asking you about the composition of the government. Do you see the motivation? Do you see any Knesset members, any government members who call the Arabs to join forces with us? Look, the proof is that 15 Arab Knesset members were elected to the Knesset, and they declare that the state of Israel is a Jewish and democratic state, that there is maybe a certain contradiction there, and the burden of proof lies upon us, the majority, to prove that this is indeed possible, that you can have a country, a state, which is Jewish, and in that same Jewish country, and on the same breath, and at the same power, it will also be democratic for all its citizens. Do you believe that the current leadership of the State of Israel can lead us there? Yes, I definitely think that the leadership in Israel, the current leadership, if it understands the priorities, contracts that we sign are not enough. We need to indeed build trust between the different sides so that the life we decide to live politically, let's say in a federation in some form, without any doubt. I know what the commissioner is doing because I was president when he was commissioner. Commissioner, you remained commissioner. Regretfully, Rivlin, we need to finish. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the Herzliya conference for indeed contributing to the thinking processes in Israel and the ability of every individual to ponder. And I'd like to tell you that in the current situation, the situation we find ourselves in which people are beginning to examine, the ethnic demon, can we take it out of the bottle? Let me tell you, we have 9 grandchildren. 3 are Iraqi Jews, 1 is a Moroccan Jew, 2 Yemenites, and nobody believes that they are Rivlins, but everybody knows that they're Yemenites. And we also have 3 Ashkenazi grandchildren, because no family is perfect. So come on, let's live together. We have such a wonderful people. We have a country, and it's such a powerful country, and the fact it's so powerful is because we love it so much and believe in it. So despite the difficulties, let's continue to believe in it, because don't tell any of the politicians, but it's all up to us. Thank you very much, Ruvi Rivlin.